Hi, it's Professor Shoemaker, and this is a quick video to show you how to use the tools in MySQL Workbench to create a database by drawing a picture of it and then using that to actually create the database. The database we're going to create is a very simple one. I'm showing you this diagram here. It has a supplier who has many parts. So for the supplier we have the ID and the name of the supplier, and then for the part we have the ID of the part and then the name and a foreign key over to the supplier. And there's this one relationship here of a one-to-many where a supplier has many parts, a part has one supplier. So it's a very standard database, and on this diagram I also have a text field up here that has my name and the name of the database in it. Over in the database itself, this is an EER diagram here. Over in the database itself, I use that diagram to create this database called SP for supplier part. And here's my part table and the supplier table and their columns and so on. So this is where we're going. Now in the next step I'm going to show you how to actually create this from scratch, and what I will do is start out and create another database called SP2 in the example. So I've closed everything up, and now I'm just looking at the initial MySQL Workbench screen. Normally when we come into this we would just click on the local instance to go in and work with the tables, but I'm not going to do that for starters here. Instead what I'm going to do is come down here in the model section and click on the plus sign to create a new model. Now these databases are big engines, and they take a minute or two to get started, and you can see it's building up this screen here piece by piece on my computer, and this takes a few seconds even though I have a very fast computer with a lot of memory on it. Now what it's done is it's created an empty schema and named it MyDB. So what's a schema? Well, it's a fancy name for the design of a database. It's named it MyDB just as a starter name, but I want to name it SP2. So what I'm going to do is double click on the field here, the name, and up will pop this property sheet down here, and I'm just going to name it SP2 and then put down a comment here. Just a sentence helps a lot. This is an example. Whoops, I clicked on the escape key. Example database. Okay. When I'm done with that, I'm going to close this, and now my database is named SP2. Now I can add tables and whatnot down here, but I personally prefer to do it inside of a diagram. So I'm going to add a new diagram here. Double click on that. It will open up an EER diagram for me. It takes a moment to paint the screen. Now there's really three parts to the screen here. One is this view on the left that has the catalog tree and so on. And over here are some modeling additions. I'm going to hide this because I'm not going to use it, and I want to get some additional screen space. Here's the diagram itself, and then there's a toolbar on the left. First thing I want to do is put in my part database. So I'm going to click, put in the part table. So or supplier. I'm going to click on this. And nothing happens right away except that I get a cursor here with the finger and a little table by it. When I click on it, it adds a new empty table on the database. It names it table 1. Now what I want to do is start setting up some of the properties on this table. To do that, I'm going to double click on the icon up here for the table, and it will open up the property sheet down at the bottom. So I'll give it the name. I'm going to call it supplier. I've been building databases for a long time, and I do things a little bit differently than they're shown in the textbook. I always name my tables in the singular, with very few exceptions. So I'll name it supplier, and then I'm going to start adding columns onto my database. I click down here and double click on this first column field. It adds ID supplier, but I like to name mine supplier ID. This will be the primary key. I'm going to tab over, and the data type is int. That's fine. It's going to be the primary key. That's what I wanted. It's not null, meaning that there must be a value in every field in every row. And finally, I'm going to make it auto increment so that the database manager will assign numbers to the records just as they're added. Then I want to give a name to my supplier. So I'll just type in name here. I don't name fields with the name of the table in them, so I don't name it supplier underscore name. I just name it name. It's going to be a varchar 45. That means it can be up to 45 characters long, but the database, if the name happens to be 10 characters long, the database will only save 10 characters. It's not the primary key, but I do want it to be not null, meaning there's no point in adding a supplier to the table if you can't also put their name in there. So now, as I've added fields down here and set up their properties, they're appearing up here in the diagram, and that's very helpful. Now what I want to do is add the table for the part. So I'll click on the table icon again. You can also do this by pressing T. Hover about where I want the thing to appear. Click. And then my new empty table shows up here. Double click on it so I can get at its properties. There it comes. I'll name it part. Give it the primary key down here. Part ID. It's going to be an integer, primary key, not null. I want it to be an auto increment. I'm also going to give this a name. NAME varchar. I want it not null. Now I've got my table designs on the screen, and to me, being able to visualize in the picture up here while I'm typing down here just, I think, makes me go much quicker, and I get things right more often. So now I've got this much designed in it. I need to establish the relationship that a part can have, a supplier can have many parts, or a part can have many can have but one supplier. So it's going to be a one-to-many relationship between these two. To do that, I'm going to come down here and select this relationship. It's a non-identifying relationship. Click that toolbar button, and then you start on the many side, if I recall right. I click here and then click there, and it establishes the relationship between them, and I did it wrong. Oh no, I did it right. I'm sorry. A part can have one supplier. A supplier has many parts. So I'm going to click away to get rid of it. This symbol right here on the screen is the many side. That's the one side. So when I hover over them, it highlights it very well. It added a supplier underscore supplier ID here. I'm just, because this is just the way I design databases. Supplier ID is sufficient. I'm double clicking. I'm just going to come in here and name it supplier ID. Again, this is somewhat different than the textbook does, but I prefer less wordy names in my database. Now, I can select these objects and move them around on the diagram. Let me close this part. The other thing, and the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to show you how to put a note on the diagram or text, and that's this icon right here. I select that, put it up here, and now I will type in some text, something like that, and I want you to always put your name in these text boxes on your diagrams. Close this, and now I'll save it, and I'm just going to save it in the folder where I'm keeping my materials, and I'll name it SP2. So that's how you design a database. I'm going to spend a moment here because I'm finicky about this sort of thing and try and get my lines straight. It's nice to have straight lines with right angles. I don't particularly care if you do it this way or like this. It doesn't really matter. The meaning is still the same. I just prefer it like this for the stuff I design, and I usually build my diagrams out from the upper left and work outward. Save it again. Okay, so that's this video. We've created the design of a database, and then I have another very brief video following this that shows you how to turn this into an actual database.